Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Well, for the balance of this radio broadcast, the next 52 minutes, Dr. Edwin Vieira joins us. And we're going to be talking about the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, this imperial federal government, the open, unprecedented assaults on the core of the Bill of Rights, the preparations for martial law in this country, with Dr. Edwin Vieira. So we're going to get to Bud and Ed and others who are military to comment on the type of training they've been given or comments they have on the military saying no to this. Oath Keepers has now got an interview with a sergeant who was involved in Katrina, and he said that upwards of half or even more, but he saw about half of them say, we're not going to be in formation saying, we're not taking part in gun confiscation. And that really shut the whole thing down. Though they had ABC News and CBS and Fox running around with teams of military, regular Army that were doing it. We played those videos last hour. But Dr. Edwin Vieira holds 4 degrees from Harvard College, AM and PhD, Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, JD Harvard Law School, and he's won cases at the Supreme Court. If I tried to read his bio, it would get going forever. But his most recent work on money and banking is the 2-volume Pieces of 8, The Monetary Powers and Disabilities of the United States Constitution. And you can read his great articles at newswithviews.com, but we'll tell you more about his books and materials. I believe he's written another book since then, and he's also started a movement to really take back the states, and he's a big part of the film I consulted on that I'm also in, Don't Tread on Me, Rise of the Republic. You want solutions? The difference between a republic and a democracy, the 9th and 10th Amendment, the Second Amendment, the militias, the power of the sheriff, Sheriff Max in here. Don't Tread on Me, Rise of the Republic, available at Infowars.com. And we've been authorized to post it for the first time ever on the web, because it was just released yesterday on DVD, at prisonplanet.tv. And that will be up this evening for prisonplanet.tv members. Dr. Edwin Vieira, before we get into the Supreme Court and what's happening there, you were on hold listening to that MP officer talking about suddenly they're being trained about the different types of martial law. What's that sound like to you?
Well, this goes back a fair ways, Alex, of course, because they've been anticipating for a long time, based on what they understand to be the inherent instability of this monetary and banking system, that we're going to be in for a great deal of economic chaos, if you will, not simply crisis, but chaos, and that will obviously lead to social dislocations, political unrest. I mean, imagine things like the Watts riots or the Los Angeles riots. Most people are familiar with that in recent history, or what happened in Argentina is a good example, and at the turn of the 20th century, and they'd had a couple of events like that earlier. I think that's what the powers that be are looking towards, and they probably don't believe, I certainly don't believe, that they're capable of finessing the difficulties they're having with the Federal Reserve currency and the debt level of the federal government, so forth and so on. So they're anticipating this will happen. They know that they don't have enough, as the expression goes, boots on the ground within the local and state police forces. So this means they have to turn to the National Guard and the regular Army to try and maintain their version of social order. And that's where the whole concept of martial law comes in. And, of course, the training that follows from that.
And, of course, your deep research and papers and books you've written on it have been seminal roadmaps. Ron Paul has quoted them as seminal roadmaps in his research, that if they wanted real homeland security, it would spring from the state and the county and would be the bona fide militia of 1789.
Well, if you go to the Constitution and you look for the word security, where do you find it? The only place it exists is in the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. And it's not just security for security's sake. It's security for this concept called a free state, which is what the entire Constitution is intended to uphold. And that's certainly not what most people today, or myself, would call martial law. It's something entirely different. And it's tied to this institution called a well-regulated militia. And if you want to know what that is, you put yourself back in the context of the Founding Fathers, most of whom, if they were the Founding Fathers by definition being males, most of whom had served or were then members of various state militias that traced back their history into the 1600s. You can find all of the principles for for the organization of a well-regulated militia in just hundreds of these statutes that were passed in the 13 colonies and then independent states prior to the ratification of the Constitution.
And to interrupt, the Democrats especially, but also Republicans argue, no, that means well-regulated military, but it says the people. I mean, there in the Second Amendment, it says the people, the rights of the people. I mean, clearly, it's 100% defined as this militia for our security is the people. And, of course, if everybody's got guns and knows how to use them, most people aren't criminals. You're going to have a very free and safe society and a polite society.
And, of course, the Second Amendment, in a sense, is redundant there because if you look at these militia statutes, which define what those people considered to be a well-regulated militia, what do those militias consist of? Well, at the time, it was every able-bodied free man from 16 to 55 or 60 when you became too old to function anymore. Now, of course, they had slaves, and the women were not legally emancipated, so it was limited at that time to men. We might have a slight change in that composition. But the idea was it was the organization of the entire community. We're supposed to have a self-governing republic in each one of the states, Republican form of government, and a self-governing community involves everyone participating to some degree, literally having a duty to participate in the governmental structure. And as the Constitution tells us in the Second Amendment, the key element to maintaining this free state, this Republican form of government, is what? A well-regulated militia, which consists of whom? The people. So this whole idea that the National Guard is the militia or somehow the Army or whatever, I mean, all you have to do is read the Constitution and see that the provisions dealing with the Army and the Navy are separate from the provisions dealing with the militia. They're two different entities.
They know exactly what they're doing.